I always had a weird attachment to the DS. Of course I'm biased to love the 3DS because I grew up with it, but the DS always fascinated me. I remember as a kid, I preferred Mario Kart DS over Mario Kart 7, just because I liked the way DS looked more. And I love the sort of low-res look that the games on there have, and that's not even to mention the disgustingly high amount of RPGs there are on this thing. Man, devs went crazy with this system. The RPGs on the system always had a unique vibe that made them stand apart from anything else that came before or after it. They were still relatively simple compared to their console counterparts, but also had the resources to make the games longer and more in-depth. Whether that's a good thing or not is up for you to decide. For me personally, some of these games are way too long. Looking at you, DQ9. But even then, it's really cool that you can have a 100+ hour RPG to fit in your pocket. Lots of bang for your buck. And honestly, there are so many overlooked DS RPGs out there, so I'm not gonna waste any more of your time and get into some that I really like. DS nostalgia is totally in vogue right now, so I thought it'd be good to take a look back and reminisce. Keep in mind that this is cozy and obscure DS RPGs, so something can be more cozy than it is obscure, vice versa. Also, I'm emulating these because the video quality when I play this on real hardware is actual ass, so yeah. I bought this $200 capture card for literally nothing, man. The DS era is when nostalgia for the SNES era was really starting to rear its head. Lots of re-releases and games sorta emulating the SNES style. And as someone who was thoroughly addicted to Chrono Trigger for a while, let me tell you how mad I am that no one told me about a DS RPG that takes direct inspiration from Chrono Trigger. And yeah, just by looking at this gameplay, it certainly takes inspiration from Chrono Trigger alright. This is Black Sigil. I personally think it's criminal that this game doesn't get any attention. If I knew that this game existed earlier, I'd be like Paul Revere, running through the streets telling people about this game. I bet like half of my audience didn't understand that because like only like 40% of my audience is American anyway. You know, it doesn't matter. You get the point. You look at this visual right here. You know what I mean. This game is about a warrior who is super badass and awesome and talented. Except he can't use magic. And for some reason, everybody hates him for this. In fact, the people in this game are brutal. They'll constantly talk down to you, treat you like you're beneath them, and it's pretty confusing until you realize there's like a huge stigma around people who are unable to utilize magic for themselves. It's apparently attributed to being dangerous and harboring an inner evil. Kairu, unlike Chrono, he actually talks. Kairu's father has been trying to find a way to erase Kairu's inner magic to no avail. The beginning part of this game is rather long and dare I say, pretty arduous. It's hard not to compare it to Chrono Trigger at first, given the obvious inspiration, but that open-endedness found in Chrono Trigger is not seen here at all. Instead, the first few hours will consist of slowly backtracking in this snowy hell while getting repeatedly abused by your peers. It's kinda a bad first impression to be honest, and it doesn't help that this snowy landscape will be your only scenery for a bit. You have a sister that accompanies you and can use magic, and everyone loves her because she's super smart and strong. Psh, who am I kidding? They just want to finesse her because they think she looks hot. She's pretty cocky and rightfully so because she's really strong, but is still a good person and treats you like a human being, despite your ailment. Your father, on the other hand, locks you away in a cave to never return after realizing you are completely incapable of possessing magic powers. I genuinely understand his reasoning, and he takes care of you even in your final moments together, but it still stings, like what the hell? The game really starts once you enter the cave. I do wish that the opening was a lot more fast-paced because, like I said earlier, it's kinda dull and drawn out. In general, it's a slow game that doesn't disrespect your time, but also doesn't fully take it into account either. Which, this applies to the battles as well. It has very Chrono Trigger-esque battles, from the battle screen to the active time system. That smoothness of Chrono Trigger just isn't there, but other than that, the fights are great. Nothing crazy revolutionary or anything, but I love how the environment changes depending on where you are positioned outside of battles. Plus, there are small obstacles that don't change the dynamic of battles too much, but they're a nice addition and help spice things up a bit. I have to say though, later in the game, battles will start to feel unnecessarily long. There's this weird pause between actions, and it will start to drive you absolutely insane, especially given how high the encounter rate is. And it doesn't really help how immobile the characters can feel at times. I'd say this game is more obscure than cozy. In fact, it can seem a little bit uncomfortable at times. Like I said earlier, the people in this game are rather callous. They feel and act like jerks. The environments can also be kinda gloomy and dirty. Like, I can't help but think about how uncomfortable it would be to live in this snowy hellscape my whole life. Everything is uncertain, it's weird, you're just as confused as the characters in this game. After the opening, it throws a bunch of jargon at you, with in-game lore you're going to have to digest quickly. And it really helps with the whole mysterious, empty sort of vibe this game has. I love these medieval settings that are sparsely populated, where even the capital cities are rather small. It makes the game feel more lonely, like the prevailing danger isn't humanity, but rather the nature surrounding you. This game has a type of emptiness you don't really see in much else. The soundtrack certainly helps with this. I'll admit, it's not all that memorable, but in terms of adding to the atmosphere, it excels. This is a really good game that takes inspiration from one of my favorite RPGs of all time and does something pretty cool with it, admittedly. Is it as good as Chrono Trigger? Obviously not. I mean, come on now, what did you expect? And it's honestly for a very specific type of audience, which I cite as a reason for it being so obscure, but dang is it interesting. This isn't a type of game you try out to see if you'll like it. You either know you're going to like it or you know you're not going to like it. If this looks like your thing, then I suggest it. For the rest of you guys though, I guess you've heard me talk about this long enough already, so moving on to the next game. Okay, so for Rune Factory 3, I'm recording on my actual 3DS because I want to fully immerse myself, you know? What I said earlier about not using a capture card, that was a lie apparently, I didn't mean that. Emulation is cool and all, but I want to play this on actual hardware because it just feels right. So, sorry if my gameplay footage is kinda poop, I really wanted to be able to play this game in my own bed, okay? It's been a hot minute since I truly got immersed in a farming game. Like many people, my introduction to the farming game genre started at Farming Simulator 16. Wait, no, that's not a universal experience? Okay, damn. Okay, well Stardew Valley really got me into farming games. People like to act like the farming game genre was in the Stone Ages before Stardew Valley came along, which really isn't the case. Of course, it wasn't as widespread as it is now, but man, it wasn't nearly as destitute as a lot of people like to describe it. But yeah, Stardew Valley really provides a unique farming game experience that I don't think it gets enough credit for. I love the uniquely kind of eerie atmosphere it has at points, and this is a trait that I haven't seen replicated in any other type of farming game. I remember this game spooking me quite a bit as a kid, despite it not having anything overtly scary within it. And yeah, venturing outside of my comfort zone of Stardew Valley has proven to be kinda difficult. I'm not unfamiliar with the Rune Factory series. In fact, I bought 4 back in like 8th grade, but I just couldn't get into it. So I didn't have very high expectations for this game, but no. Something just clicked for me in my brain because I love this game from the start. First off, I have to say, I know this video is called Cozy and Obscure DS RPGs, but I really need to emphasize the cozy aspect of this game. It has that DS charm that's not really replicated anywhere else. It's really hard to describe, honestly. I think this occurs when a game is simple at its core, but still has a lot of things to do within it. How small these DS games really are adds a layer of coziness, because in reality, this game is pretty small. Whereas other farming games, the scope is really big, and it can seem overwhelming at first. With Rune Factory 3, you kinda have a clear vision from the very beginning, and it's super easy to get into. The beginning of farming games are always my least favorite parts, just due to having to get accustomed to everything. Along with the endless tutorials, man, they annoy me so bad. But like I said, this game is pretty simple. The actual setting of this game I love as well. The town is really tightly packed, which adds to the sort of homely vibe it has. It feels like a real, bustling community, as the different characters are able to interact with each other so often. Also, I just love the low-res DS graphics, man. I am a sucker for this stuff. Also, the characters here, I really like a lot. They're not mind-blowing or anything, but they're always nice to interact with. A problem I had with Rune Factory 4 is that some of the characters felt a bit samey and kinda generic. And here, it's not like they're masterfully written or anything, but they do their job at adding to the personality of this game. Plus, their designs are really unique compared to the game after it. They're much more memorable and makes them stand out to me more. I don't think I can remember like any character from 4, maybe the freaking Night Girl. I don't even remember her name actually. A problem I have with a lot of other farming games is sometimes it can feel like there's a lack of community. You can argue this is intended for things like Stardew Valley, adding to the somewhat gloomy and eerie undertones I mentioned earlier. It feels less like a community and more like a group of apathetic people just like living near each other or something. I don't know how to describe it. So it was really refreshing to experience a semblance of community in this game. The farming itself is pretty typical, although it's really generous with stamina, so I went absolutely crazy with my crop growing. In fact, you know what? This game is just really generous in general. It is so rewarding for absolutely no reason, and I don't say that as a bad thing. You can level up a skill for running, a skill for fishing, hell, there's even a level up for sleeping. You guys are wondering where these brain rot dopamine overload games came from, and I mean, just look at this game, it's basically patient zero. It's hella satisfying too, to randomly level up a skill. These sound effects do something to my brain, man. Making money here is super easy too, as there's a plethora of different items you can get and activities you can partake in to get some extra cash. Of course, farming is the focal point when it comes to making money, but there are plenty of side hustles out there. Fishing, foraging, and brutally overhunting local wildlife for your own benefit like the capitalist you are. It's really freeing, and there's so little pressure placed on you that you're always satisfied no matter what pace you go at. I think that's like the best thing for a farming game because sometimes you can feel a bit overwhelmed, like you're not going fast enough, you're not doing enough, but this game, it doesn't really rush you with anything. Usually in these types of games, you can tell when you're ahead or behind, but honestly, I don't even care because I'm just doing my own thing at this point. Now, I'm not going to say this game is better than 4 because I haven't really played 4 enough, so I mean, even my tastes back then just weren't as sophisticated. But again, that feeling of being overwhelmed that I felt in 4 just straight up doesn't exist here. Rarely do I binge games anymore, but I've been eating this game up. Since I have a lot of free time this summer, I'm basically treating YouTube like a 9 to 5 on the days where I'm not busy. And let me tell you, I've been playing this game on and off the clock. That's how addicted I am. I am certainly going to play Rune Factory 5 in the future. It's been rotting in my Steam library for a video I am never going to make because I value my mental health. But if I enjoy 5, even a fraction of the amount that I enjoy 3, well, it's gonna be pretty fun to play. And also, it rains a lot in this game, and I really like rain. I really like rain. The Wizard of Oz. I've never seen The Wizard of Oz. Well, I mean, I've seen The Wiz, which is basically The Wizard of Oz, but black, and it has Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson. But I didn't even see this version of the movie. No, I saw The Wiz live. I was obsessed with this as a kid. I had it on DVR and played it on repeat almost like every day after school. And it's kinda weird because this whole thing is a stage reenactment of a remake of a movie based on a book. And to be honest, I still feel clueless when it comes to anything Wizard of Oz related, but I don't really feel out of my element here because like, it's not that hard to wrap my head around this. I've heard the horror stories and crazy conspiracies surrounding the original, as well as having gone down some absolutely insane rabbit holes surrounding this whole thing. Things involving stalking, years of harassment, and a guy actually obsessed with the Wizard of Oz, but that's a story for another day. But aside from that, I thought it was time to consume the series in earnest. Even if it's from a licensed DS game. Hey, this game, especially for a licensed DS game, is pretty remarkable. Everyone talks about it like it's some sort of masterpiece, just due to the fact that it's a licensed DS game that's not pure schlock. And it makes a lot of decisions that I can commend for being unique. Licensed games tend to not really experiment all that much, which isn't a crime or anything, but it adds to the stigma surrounding these types of games. And honestly, this thing is just really solid. Is it perfect? Hell no, more on that later. But was I pleasantly surprised by this thing? Yeah, definitely. First off, I need to gush about the visuals for a second. This game is absolutely gorgeous. To all the normal people watching this, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to endure me talking about this pixelated mess and try to rationalize why it's the best thing to grace the earth. It has a soft, nostalgic aesthetic to it, from the storybook opening to the lush, vibrant world. Even the swamp in this game looks lively. The whimsy of this world is perfectly portrayed in the setting. And it's obvious there was an extensive effort to make these places appealing, especially with the limitations of the DS. People constantly praise this game for its graphics, and that praise is so deserved. Running through these environments never feels like a chore, even if the linearity of them kinda brings it down for me, which, about that. Yeah, this game is mainly just a string of dungeons. The gameplay loop leaves so much to be desired. There's a hub world here, which I'm not a huge fan of. One of my favorite aspects of RPGs is the sense of placelessness. So the fact that the only type of exploration you're going to be doing is taking place in the dungeon kinda ruins it for me. The gameplay loop here basically boils down to enter a dungeon, fight enemies, level up, get coins, and lose. Then go to the hub world and repeat, until you're eventually strong enough to power through the entire thing without losing. I noticed this in a few other licensed RPGs, where the game feels more like a string of dungeons rather than a full experience. This is definitely a preference, and some people vibe with this, but for me, it comes off as repetitive. I'd say this game is a much better version of another licensed RPG I'm playing for a future video. One Piece Romance Dawn for the 3DS. It also focuses only on dungeons with a hub world and a similar gameplay loop. In fact, this DS game looks better than this 3DS game, but let's not be too harsh on this thing here. He's a guest. I'll have plenty of time to rip him apart in my next video, trust me. I'd say what makes the Wizard of Oz work and Romance Dawn fail is that this game is still pretty fun combat wise. Even if the gameplay loop is repetitive, this game has a combat system I've never quite seen before. It's traditional turn based with 4 party members, but they can't all contribute every turn. Instead, they have a different level of importance that determines how much they can contribute to a fight. For example, Tin Man is the strongest, so he can only be used once per turn, and if he's used, only one other party member can go during that turn as well. These icons right here determine how many actions can be taken in a turn, and you can't go over this limit. The strategizing in this game is really fun, and I love how innovative this aspect of the game is, even if I kinda sorta use the same layout for every fight. But man, I just can't get over the look of this game though. It looks like an early 3DS game. It's super impressive, and honestly, I do not know how they pulled this off at all. Like, there was no reason to make a licensed Wizard of Oz RPG look this gorgeous. And traversing this gorgeous world is actually really seamless. You walk around this game with the wheel on the bottom of your screen, but I have it on the side of the screen for your viewing pleasure. It's not as annoying as you'd think, and I much prefer this over controlling her with a D-pad. Also, I can pet my dog in this game. Actual 10 out of 10 masterpiece right here. This game has a lot of content and kinda overstays its welcome in my opinion, but man, is it just too good to care. Also, I searched this game on YouTube and there's like multiple videos with hundreds of thousands of views talking about it, so maybe it's not as obscure as I thought it was. Whoops. Anyway, who would have thought a game I jokingly name dropped in my very first video would actually be really good? Izuna, the unemployed ninja, follows the very relatable story of an unemployed girl having to atone for her sins after accidentally angering the gods. Everyone close to her had their personalities changed, but she's so insufferable that the powers that change people's nature just straight up doesn't work on her. So you must indulge in the dungeon diving experience to mix things right again. I probably should have been able to tell by the title, but this game is really unserious. The main character is legitimately a horrible person and I love it. She's so manipulative, uncaring, and selfish. There's a point in this game where she does this, because she'd rather not be living than pay off the debt that she owes. As for the gameplay, it was a total shock for me, man. Believe it or not, I've never played a game like this before. Heck, I don't even know what type of game this is called. It reminds me of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, or that weird Dragon Quest spin-off with the shopkeeper. It's basically a grid-based, turn-based dungeon crawler RPG that acts sorta as a roguelite, if that makes any sense whatsoever. You're expected to die a lot in this, and you lose all your items and money when you do die, but you still get stronger after each expedition. It was definitely a shock at first because, again, I've never played a game like this before. It kind of felt like rocket science at the beginning, especially with all of the items it throws at you. But at its core, it's relatively simple. Enter the dungeon, grab items to use, kick ass, level up, and keep exploring until you pass out or beat the dungeon. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz RPG in that regard, with the hub world and main focus on dungeons. You rinse and repeat to get progressively stronger and more experienced as the game goes on. This game definitely has that overlooked DS game feel to it. It's the feeling that's hard to explain. Playing this feels me leaving empty, not due to the actual game itself, but due to the fact that there aren't that many people out there playing this game nowadays. Playing this game feels kinda lonely. While everyone out there is playing their Final Fantasies and Personas, I'm in my room at midnight chillin', playing a game about a sociopathic ninja trying to pay off their debts. And this game isn't even all that long either. Most of that length comes from the trial and error of coming across the challenges this game presents. Repetition is a part of this game, and even as an RPG fan, it kinda makes me feel a bit tired. This is designed for a very specific type of person, and that person ain't me. But I enjoyed my time with it. It's a quaint little thing, condemned to a life of obscurity. Oh, also apparently, it was announced that there's a revival or something like that coming, but it's been like 2 years and there's nothing. Like literally nothing, no promos, no updates, just emptiness. So, rest in peace, I guess. And this was also published by Atlas, by the way, so yeah. I can't wait to reuse footage for this game when I eventually talk about it in my Obscure Atlas Games video. If I ever even make it, who knows at this point. So, in my Cozy Obscure GBA RPGs video, I played a neat little game called Magical Vacation, a quaint little RPG with one of the most cozy openings I've experienced in any game ever, with amazing character dynamics and a beautiful aesthetic for the first hour. The rest of the game was fine, a somewhat typical RPG that I didn't think much of. After that video was done, I was under the impression that I would walk away and never think about that game ever again. Then the comments told me there was a sequel on the DS. Thank this guy, because if it weren't for them, this video wouldn't have been made as soon as it was. Magical Starsign is weird, because everything that made me sorta apathetic towards Magical Vacation past the opening is present throughout the entire game here. In fact, the opening is pretty unnotable. It's super quick and barely anything really happens, but to be honest, in terms of gameplay, I enjoyed this one more. Sure, the character dynamics aren't nearly as interesting, and the setting compared to the last game is, well, it's there. Maybe that's my bias against space settings compared to this cozy ass beach. You guys know how much I adore beaches. I mean, what do I even like about this game then? I like the combat a lot. My biggest complaint about Magical Vacation was that the combat was really boring and the cool story aspects took too much of a backseat after a certain point. This game didn't really have anything like an engaging narrative for my expectations to be broken though, so yeah, there's that part. Battles are regular turn-based, but there are a few things that make them stand out. First of all, there's a front row and a back row, the back row creating multi-target magic attacks. And to take people to the back row, you must drag them there with your stylus. And, yeah, no, it's not as notable as I thought. That's basically all the new stuff I care to mention. I like it. I don't know why, I just like it. And I flip-flop from this feeling too, it's weird. A part of me wants to write this off as a worse sequel, and another part of me can appreciate it for what it is. I still like the character interactions here. Again, they feel like actual children, and it's cool the way party members interact with each other. A lot of the time, the protagonists of these games are stuffy adults with actual responsibilities and stuff. It's boring. So it's pretty funny playing as these kids who are labeled as the chosen ones, but really just couldn't care at all. In fact, they're kinda snobby about it, justifying their questionable actions due to this arbitrary label they just found out about. And that feeling of hopping planets with your peers in this cozy little spaceship just can't be beaten. It honestly gives the vibes of those 2000s children's cartoons I used to watch. Of course, it's less PG than those, but the atmosphere and humor here is just reminiscent of that. It's not like a baby game or anything, and it won't make you feel patronized for playing it, so don't worry about that part. Playing this won't make you feel dumb or anything. Never in my time playing this did I think to myself, man, I'm too old to be doing this shit. It has a much larger scope compared to Magical Vacation, and it's certainly a worthy successor. Gameplay wise, it's more enjoyable, and even the narrative aspects of this grew on me a lot as the game went on. I like these characters, I like these worlds, I like this gameplay. I do have one thing to say though, and that's the fact that compared to the GBA game, the art for this one is noticeably kinda worse. Not bad by any means, but as a pixel artist, I noticed some things look noticeably more simple than they were in the previous game, more notably some of the battle environments. Either way, I love how at the start of writing this, I felt kind of unsure about it, but now I can confidently say I thoroughly enjoyed this experience. W game right here. I didn't play Metal Max 3 for long because I am a dumb American who cannot read a lick of Japanese to save my life. I love the Metal Max games. In fact, I was planning on making a long ass video essay on the entire series. Man, this video is full of me talking about these ambitious projects that I just completely abandoned. Well, I mainly dropped it because most of these games are like really inaccessible to the average American, like some of them aren't even fan translated, and I have like no means of reliably translating them. That applies to this game. I did my due diligence of translating it myself, but man, it's just not enough. How do I talk about a game I can barely understand whatsoever? Well, I interpret the Metal Max series to be a critique on the modern state of humanity and our overconsumption and normalization of weapons of mass destruction. This game is basically America in the fact that everyone can possess anything they want if they want it bad enough. And it ain't even that hard, just talk to a guy and he'll hook you up. Americans would dig the hell out of this series, especially since we're too ignorant to understand basic satire and we look at this game and think to ourselves, wow, this is badass. And I can't even blame us because, like, it is badass. Maybe I'm the problem. It's heavily inspired by that Cold War aesthetic, where Americans were constantly terrified of the prospect of mutually assured destruction. And 50s science fiction plays a big role in the aesthetics of this series, and this one in particular does it best in my opinion. It looks so crispy and appealing. I always loved when games combine 3D with 2D. This works best on the DS. They like went through a phase of doing that. It always looked so good. The sprites fit in so well with these low-res 3D environments. Looks better than any pixel remaster in my opinion, but I know I've spoken enough too much already with such an outrageous take. Metal Max 3 feels much less post-apocalyptic than the previous Metal Max game I played. There's still a semblance of a functioning society here, and in fact, things are rather organized. Navigating through this game, despite not speaking Japanese, was surprisingly easy, but I got lost the moment I was forced to go somewhere for the sake of the story. Once again, in Metal Max fashion, this game is very open-ended, so yeah, it's easy to get lost already without the language barrier. There are also roaming bosses that you can take down for rewards, but also aren't required, like bounty hunts. And cool optional areas with cool stuff that I can't describe because I'm afflicted with only being able to speak one language. It's a really cool game that I didn't dive into for that long, but I wish I could. Metal Max is awesome. Okay, so future Pixis speaking, this game does have a translation. I sort of found out too late to do anything about it, but you know damn well I am playing the hell out of this game. I legitimately had no idea where I got the impression that this never got a translation. Curse myself for not finding it sooner. Dragon Quest IX, I have feelings about this game. I'm playing this one on real hardware again, so the gameplay is gonna look crusty. And I'm not getting a ton of footage because I am not here to replay this game, okay? I just wanted an excuse to talk about it. I've played this more than enough already, give me a break. Dragon Quest games are always so unnecessarily lengthy. You don't play a Dragon Quest game, you commit to it. Playing any other game feels like cheating on a committed relationship. Dragon Quest requires your full attention, and that's part of the charm. I'm nostalgic for my Dragon Quest XI phase. Going over to a friend's house and binging anime all night while I lay on the couch trying to multitask between Komi Can't Communicate and the story of this game. I remember my Dragon Quest IX phase like a blur, a bittersweet memory that I have no desire to go back to. There are so many things that attract me to this. First of all, the dynamic camera in the battles, which make them look so much more cinematic. That low-res pixely aesthetic that I am an absolute sucker for. I've said it so many times. I know you guys probably think this looks like hot garbage, but to me, it's absolute bliss. And unlike Rune Factory 3, this is a huge game that feels small basically all the time. And honestly, this is both a good and a bad thing. It's good in the fact that they really make use of the environments here, and it's all really memorable. It really creates a nice atmosphere, not seen in any other Dragon Quest or any other RPG for that matter. The bad thing though is, this game is like really long, and that simplicity starts to become mind-numbing the longer the game goes on. All the mechanics and aspects of this game are easy to understand, but I feel like there's something fundamentally missing here. I never actually beat this game. I got to the end and just decided, you know what, I've seen enough. I might as well just end it off here. And please understand that I never do that. Like, that is completely unheard of from me. Even more rare is that I felt literally no guilt over my decision either. Everything in this game is practically a double-edged sword. You create your own party members and customize them to your liking. Awesome. But they're bland vessels that serve no real purpose in the story other than to aid you in battle. Not awesome. You gain access to classes that you can change at will. Awesome. But every time you change a class, you get taken back to level 1 and have to grind for your new class to actually be somewhat useful. Not awesome. Dragon Quest IX was fun, but never really satisfying if you know what I mean. Leveling up in this game literally feels like an afterthought. I would optimize the best way to gain levels, and here, I honestly still felt really weak. And I don't expect the game to let me be overpowered all the time, but it's really demoralizing that I can be like 10 levels ahead of what I'm supposed to be and still feel weak. Plus, like I said earlier, the fact that you get reverted to level 1 during class changes basically makes grinding mandatory, which I dislike mandatory grinding in anything if it's excessive enough. And trust me, grinding for levels in this is a chore, even with metal slimes in mind. I know I sound like a hater of this game, but I really appreciate it for what it is. I love how large and lively this world feels. The towns are actually populated and feel like functioning settlements. How much detail was put into this world, even allowing you to change camera angles. How customizable this game is. I mean, I have the best party ever. Pixa, Vegeta, Girlixa, and this random girl I drew like a few years ago to practice animation. I don't know why I added her. I'm gonna replace her soon. I just couldn't think of anybody else to make. That's my bad, guys. It's fun to give them made up backstories on how they got into these situations, and that feeling of building a team is unmatched. The enemy designs here work so well and end up being really clever and expressive. The music is top notch and adds so much to the atmosphere, especially the battle theme, which is a banger by the way. The community around this game, despite being small, is really supportive and helpful. The multiplayer focus of this game puts so much emphasis on community building. Even if I'm sorta like 2 decades late to the party, the game still feels alive after so much time has passed. You can't say that for many other DS games, especially ones that are so heavily focused on online activities like this game. The cutscenes are genuinely well made and are honestly mind-blowing for the system. There aren't quite that many games out there like this. Even if it's not my favorite game ever, it feels like the quintessential DS RPG. It's so well-rounded, and sometimes, that's all a game really needs to be. It's cozy, it's charming. What more could a man ask for in life? What more could a man ask for? I don't know what I was expecting with this game. Like, I genuinely came in blinder than Stevie Wonder. Okay, that was uncalled for. I just saw a few screenshots of this game and I was like, hey, why not? When I first booted it up, I didn't even know it was going to be an RPG, and if I had to remove it from the video. That's how clueless I was going in. But I was not expecting this at all. I think this game goes to show how experimental games got on the DS. In Contact, you play as a faceless, bodiless entity, communicating to the scientist to lead this average Joe along and turn him into the model man. You collect these runes, all while helping your average Joe, or in this case Terry, do the scientist's bidding. It reminds me of a much less difficult, less grindy, less slow version of the Shining Soul games. The character here will auto-attack, and I love how much it focuses more on management rather than actual combat. There are a lot of factors to take into account with this game, but none of it feels like it's required to actually achieve anything. When I saw the setup for this game, I thought it'd be a challenging, somewhat repetitive grind fest, kinda like the Shining Soul games. But no, this game is very generous with your time. Exploration is genuinely fun and so rewarding, it's really free feeling. There's a lot to find here, and honestly, if you really wanted to, you could kinda sorta label this an open world RPG. This scientist guy adds so much personality and charm to this game. I love the dynamic he and Terry has, him sorta lightly bossing him around while Terry stares at him blankly. Terry is just a somewhat mediocre guy who by chance got forced into this very demanding situation. He's treated like a kid by the scientist guy, who the scientist actually entrusts you to guide Terry along his adventure. Like, I have to adore it, just for how unique it is, both in personality and gameplay. It's like a simulation RPG, rather than an action RPG, and the top screen having the scientist do idle activities just adds to everything. It feels like a true old-fashioned adventure in that sense. Extra points to this game for taking place in the modern day. I have a soft spot for RPGs that do that. Sometimes a medieval fantasy setting gets dry, you know? As for the gameplay, you know how I earlier described it as feeling more like a simulation game? Well, think of it like Xenoblade, where the characters attack automatically, but there are special skills you can activate to do extra damage. It's essentially a proto version of that. Obviously, you get stronger, as is common for most RPGs, but what sets this apart from others is the fact that each skill levels up individually. The more you fight, the more damage you'll eventually do. The more you get hurt, the more health you'll accumulate. The more you run, the better your agility will be. There are also costumes that allow you to achieve different things, like cooking. One thing I really like about this game is the pixel art. Yes, I usually prefer when games use a consistent style of pixel art all around, but these more detailed backgrounds, contrasted with these simple sprites, is just kinda a vibe. You really only ever see this on the GBA and DS, maybe the PS1 on occasion. When it looks bad, it looks bad. But when it's done right, it's really cozy and kinda serene. And like, yeah, I usually associate this aesthetic with lower budget games, which I'm not gonna lie is pretty fair, and it's definitely a novelty rather than something I rationally appreciate. Side note, here's a really hilarious fact. When promos for this game came out, people believed it was a nod at a potential sequel to Earthbound, since the scientist sorta resembles Dr. Andonauts, but it wasn't a sequel. And Earthbound fans got their heart broken once again. I don't even know how they do it. Earthbound fans have to be some of the strongest fans of anything. It's kind of funny though, I'm not gonna lie. Contact is another game released by Atlas as well, so again, definitely reusing this sweet footage for that video. We ballin', boys. When it comes to YouTube, I hardly ever cover strategy games. Not because I don't like them, hell, I love them. But they're so time consuming, not just to write about, but also to play. Like the average RPG I play for this channel is like 15 to 20 hours long. These games, even some of the older ones, can be up to 70 hours long. Do you know how much footage that is? My PC can barely handle all my Earthbound recordings. And also, I just prefer to play these without any outside factors I need to focus on. I mean, these things already require enough of my attention. I don't need to be worrying about a script and recording and editing, bleh, no, that's too stressful. So I think this is my first time actually covering a strategy game on my channel, other than Tactics Ogre of course. And if I'm being completely honest, I would have written this off if it weren't for the pixel art and art style. I love the way this game looks. It's not really chibi, but it's also pretty cute looking, especially for a game about war and all that stuff. In that regard, it really appealed to me, and the obscurity even more so. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a peculiar vibe I get from playing forgotten older games. Just think about the fact that at one point in time, this game was probably someone's whole life. Maybe a developer working overtime to make sure the code is working as intended, or a dude in 2009 playing this game while browsing MySpace and watching I don't know, iCarly? I don't know, man, I barely remember the 2000s. I don't even know if MySpace was dead by then. Of course, I don't actually see these memories for myself, but it leaves much to the imagination. When did these less well-known games peak in their popularity? Despite these very interesting questions, that did not stop me from struggling with this game. Only strategy I've actually played is Fire Emblem, okay? I didn't even get a fourth of the way through that one either. And it was like the easiest one too, which is crazy. I had trouble with this game. Turns out I'm not very good at strategy RPGs. Checks out because I also suck at chess. It's a rather typical tactical RPG with walls of text and stories where the characters talk back and forth. I vibe with it, to be honest. I don't always need some crazy over-the-top visuals to convey the story. Sometimes I like to digest stuff through a few portraits talking, you know? Characters can also have interactions on the battlefield. It's a nice touch, even if it's not uncommon for these types of games. The dialogue can be pretty unserious too. I like that this game is more lighthearted than I anticipated. I can see myself getting attached to these characters, which is why it sucks to see them go away forever due to my stupid mistakes. Why? Permadeath is a thing in this game, as is customary, and I always love permadeath in these types of games. It made losing a battle go from an annoying inconvenience to an actual game-changing development. It forces you to be less reckless, and also try to predict how the enemy will move. I didn't play this for long because it's not really my thing, but I'm sure I'll be coming back to it once I inevitably become addicted to tactical RPGs. It hasn't happened yet though, but it will soon. Trust me. I love musicals, dude. I genuinely love musicals. I am the first to support my local theater. Please support your local theater, by the way, guys. If you're into that type of stuff, these guys put so much hard work into what they do. I love musicals because there's something so raw about them, even when they're not live. Back in sophomore year of high school, I had a pretty big musical phase, and that coincidentally coincided with me finding about this neat little RPG called Rhapsody. I saw it on Steam and kinda got obsessed with it, or at least as obsessed obsessed as you can be with a game without actually ever playing it. The song sorta captivated me, and I remember being sleep deprived as hell on my friend's couch, staring at the screen like a zombie. Looking back, I really should have bought it for myself, but I never did for whatever reason. Fast forward 2 years later, and I found out this game is actually also on the DS. Sure, I prefer having it on Steam, but this will suffice. This version of the game is rather overlooked compared to the PS1 version, but I mean it is a port, so it does make a lot of sense. Although from what it looks like, the combat system is different from the PS1 version. The PS1 version kinda looks like a turn-based, grid-based RPG, while this one is regular turn-based stuff, which I'm totally fine with, by the way. One downside of playing the DS version is that the songs actually aren't translated. And like, the singing in the PS1 version is actually good, so it's not something I can ignore like that. Whoever made these games was speaking directly to me, despite the fact that I wasn't even born yet. And I don't care if it's corny or cringe or whatever, I vibe with this shit so hard you don't even understand it. It doesn't get as much love as I want it to, but you can't have everything in life, you know. Hard lesson to learn at the ripe old age of 18, I guess. Having never played this game before, I was pleasantly surprised by what this had to offer. I can't really compare this version to the PS1 version all that extensively since, you know, I haven't played the latter. But from some walkthroughs I took a quick glance at, this seems pretty faithful to the original, narrative-wise at least. You play as this girl who can talk to puppets and is an absolute simp for this prince. The whole talking to puppets thing allows her to recruit various party members from around the world and add them to her party. I wasn't expecting the variety in party members that we do see, so it's an awesome addition. The characters themselves are lovely, it gives me old school Disney vibes. They can be sorta sarcastic and snarky, but never mean. The main character acts like an actual teenage girl and not a sanitized boring girl character who's a saint to everyone she meets. It actually gets pretty funny. I never laughed out loud, but I smiled at a few bits. I especially liked when they broke the fourth wall out of nowhere near the beginning of the game. I wasn't expecting that type of humor from this. The dynamic her and her bestie have is really charming too. They screw each other over occasionally, in a way that I do with my friends. In fact, this game in general has a lovely atmosphere. It all feels so human. It's sorta idealized and everything mostly stays lighthearted, but the people still feel real. I like how talking to these NPCs gives you a glimpse into their lives and aspirations. A problem I have with RPGs is talking to NPCs can feel kinda pointless. They give basic observations or tell the player about useless trash I do not care about. And like I said earlier, everything in this game gives me old school Disney vibes, not just from the writing, which I mean, a lot of the stuff that happens in this game gives me huge Alice in Wonderland vibes. Especially the part where you enter this restaurant and these cats try to cook you alive. Feels like it came straight out of that movie. But also through the environments and conflict, it follows that fairy tale story writing structure. It gets sappy, it gets heartfelt, it kinda gets dark at points. One of my favorite parts of the game was talking to these puppets scattered around the world. Each one of them have very interesting pieces of dialogue talking about their desires and the things they see as mute puppets observing the world around them. Some of them yearn for more, a future where they can be noticed. Others express envy at humans for being able to walk around and talk. It actually gets kinda dark. I feel bad for them, man. I really don't have much else to say, huh? There's only so many times I can say this game is cool and cozy and awesome before I run out of things to say. I love this game, and I am not continuing with the DS version. I am playing the PS1 version as God intended, and I am sticking to it. It's really cool and basically a classic Disney movie turned into an RPG, but please play the PS1 version. It's just better. Apparently. I don't know, I haven't played it yet, but I just know, okay? As is tradition, I'm going to go over some honorable mentions, games I want to talk about but not extensively. Children of Mana. I'm completely burnt out on the Mana series, so I didn't play this one that much. I never realized the DS had a mana game, and it looks pretty typical. There's only so much mana a man can take before he starts going insane. Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. A weird as hell Sonic RPG that people talk about more than they've actually played. Like, it's not obscure or anything, but I can bet 9 times out of 10, when someone mentions this game, they've never played it before. They just use it as like a cool piece of trivia or something. It's a really interesting piece of Sonic history, but my gosh, is it repetitive. My brain is turning into mush, dude. Dragon Quest Monsters Joker, a fun and impressive monster collector with a Dragon Quest flair. Visually it's dull, which sorta stood out to me, but the game itself is pretty dope. Making a team with the classic Dragon Quest monsters is shockingly fun. Who would have thought? I don't know, maybe them, cause they've done this like plenty of times before, even in the mainline games actually. Pokemon Heart Gold. Not obscure, but very cozy and easily my favorite Pokemon game. Look at my shinies for this. They're very cool. I think that's enough low-res pixelated goodness for my liking today. Editor Pixa, let's end this joint. I made this video on a very tight schedule. I got hired to my job like right as I was working on this. And I'm also trying to get this done before my Wu-Tang Clan concert. Yeah, I'm going to see Wu-Tang live and I got really good seats too. Graduating has been great so far. I fall asleep safe and sound, knowing I'll never have to wake up at 5 a.m. for school every day anymore. Anyway, good morning, good evening, good night, whatever. Just live your life and have fun. My time is up for today, but yours is just beginning. That was freaking corny as hell. Okay, you know what? Peace out. See you next video. Bye, guys.